All right, here we are, ready to find the area of composite shapes. So for the last couple lessons, we've been working on individual shapes. We did parallelograms, triangles, we did circles in a previous lesson, and trapezoids. So today what we're going to be doing is combining those shapes together into new and funky shapes, and then still being able to find the area of them. So I'm going to start off by kind of just compiling a list of all of the formulas that we have, so that way we don't have to flip through our notes to try to remember them all. So we started off with a circle. The area formula for a circle was pi r squared, where r is the radius, and if you remember, the radius goes from the center to the edge. Sometimes you'll know the diameter, so the radius is half of that. Then we went on to parallelograms. So parallelograms, rectangles, and squares, they all have the same formula. That's base times height. Now what's really important to remember with all polygons is that the base and the height will always, always, always be perpendicular. That means the base isn't always going to be the bottom, it's just going to be the one that's perpendicular to another side. We talked about triangles recently, and for triangles, I actually showed you how a triangle is half of a parallelogram, which means its formula will be half of the parallelogram formula. And then finally, we talked about trapezoids the other day, and the trapezoid formula was 1/2 the sum of the bases times the height. Now there's a couple different ways you can write these two formulas. If you prefer to divide by 2 instead of multiplying by 1/2, that's totally fine. All right, so let's look at our first shape. This is kind of a crazy shape. It almost looks like it would be an arrow if there had been another triangle here. So the first thing you want to do is identify what shapes are making up this shape. So we can see here that we've got a rectangle here. So here, I'm just going to call that number 1. We have 2, 3, and 4. Those are all triangles. Now, all of these triangles are actually congruent, which means we could just find the area of one triangle and then multiply by 3 to save ourselves some time. And then we have the half circle here. So first thing I do is just organize my thought process. What are the shapes that I've got? And now I'm going to think about what formulas do I need. So for my rectangle, that's going to be base times height. For my triangles, I'm going to have 3 triangles, and I'm going to use the same formula for each triangle. And then for my half circle, so pi r squared, but I want half of that, so I'm going to go ahead and divide that by 2. So now let's just look at what we have and see if we have enough information. So if I start out with my rectangle, my base and my height, those are the ones that are going to be perpendicular. So 16 times 22.4. So 358.4. For my 3 triangles, I'm going to do 3 times 1/2 base of my triangle. So remember, your base and your height, even in a triangle, are perpendicular. So the 20 and the 18 are the perpendicular ones. So those are the numbers I'm going to use for my base and my height. So I'm going to actually do 3 times 1/2. I know that's 1.5. You don't have to know that's 1.5. I'm just showing you what I'm typing into my calculator. But you could also do half of 20 first, which is 10, and then multiply those. That's up to you. So 1.5 times 20 times 18, 540. And then we've got our half circle. So the area of my half circle. So that's going to be pi times radius. Now 20 is all the way across that circle, which means 20 is the radius. So 20 is the diameter, so 10 will be my radius. And don't forget to divide by 2. Remember, we want half of that circle. So that's going to be 100 times pi. If you don't have a calculator that has a pi button, you can also use 3.14. That's totally fine. So 100 times pi, and then I'm going to divide that by 2. 157.1. I'm just going to round to the nearest tenth. All right, so these are my 3 individual shapes. So now I'm just going to add everything together for my total. So 358.4, 540, 157.1. So that's not right. I did 0, 1. That number's way too big. Let's try that again. That's much more reasonable. 1055.5. We're doing area, so my units will be squared, centimeters squared. All right, let's take a look at number 2. I'm actually going to ask you to pause the video for number 2 and see what you can figure out on your own. And then either when you get stuck or when you think you have an answer, unpause the video and see how it ends. So for this one, we've got a rectangle and then we have 3 half circles, and all these half circles are the same. So area of my rectangle base times height, area of my half circle is going to be pi r squared divided by 2, but I have 3 of those, so I'm going to multiply that by 3. Base and my height are perpendicular. My radius, well, this is where it's going to get tricky. So for my radius, that's just this little part here. Now, every radius is congruent because these circles are all congruent. That means all the way across is 18 because it's a rectangle. And there are 6 radius using that 18. So that means each radius is going to equal 3. So 3 half circles, pi times 3 squared divided by 2. All right, so I just want to go over that one more time, why the radius is 3. So 18 is this entire distance, and that entire distance is made up of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 radius. So 6 radius, is equal to 18 meters. So then to find the length of one radius, I just divided both sides by 6. So my radius was 3. So that's where this 3 right here came from. All right, so 12 times 18 is 216. 3 squared is 9, so 9 times pi divided by 2, but then that is 1 half circle. I have 3 of those. I got 42.4. So my total area then of the rectangle plus those 3 half circles, 258.4 meters squared. Awesome. All right, the last 2 problems, instead of them being shapes, bigger shapes where we have little shapes, put them together, we're actually going to be finding the area of the shaded region. So we're going to kind of think about this as one whole shape, and we're going to subtract out the unshaded part. So instead of adding shapes together this time, there's going to be some subtraction. So if we look at the shapes we do have, maybe you see this a couple different ways. I see a rectangle with this big triangle taken out. So you might see the rectangle with 2 little triangles taken out. That's also okay. I'm going to just take out the one big triangle. So we've got the area of the rectangle. So for my shaded region is the area of the rectangle minus the area of that triangle. So instead of adding them together this time, if this triangle had been out here, we would add them together, but we're actually taking away from that rectangle. So we're going to have base times height and 1/2 base times height. All right, so for our rectangle, 14 times 25. And for our triangle, this is 25. This is still a rectangle, so its opposite side is also 25. And the height is perpendicular, so our 11 will be the height. 14 times 25 is 350. And we're going to subtract 25 times 11 divided by 2. That's 1/2 base times height, so 37.5. So 350 minus 137.5. My total area of my shaded region, 212.5 centimeters squared. All right, last problem. Again, I'd like for you to try this one on your own. Now this one's kind of cool because there's a couple different ways that you could approach this problem, but we should end up with the same answer no matter how you approach it. So please be bold, be challenged, pause the video and see how far you can get. All right, one way that you can see the shape is if I cut it right there, we have a triangle, a rectangle, half circle cut out. You could think of it that way. But you could also think of it as one trapezoid with a half circle cut out. So how did you see it? Most people tend to see it as the triangle, the rectangle, and the half circle cut out. If you saw it the other way, that's awesome. I'm actually going to do it that first way though, just because usually that's how people see it. So the area of my shaded region, I'm going to see it as the triangle. Oh, sorry, that's not a triangle. The triangle plus the rectangle. So if I view these together, but I'm going to take out the half circle. All right, so triangle is 1/2 base times height, rectangle, base times height, and half circle, so that's full circle divided by 2. All right, so triangle, base times height. 25 is not the base and it is not the height because it is not perpendicular to the bottom of my triangle. So first thing, we need to identify this right here as our height. It means we're gonna have to find it. Now, in order to find it, we also need to identify how long the base is. Now, 37 is the entire bottom. It's not the bottom of the triangle. So to figure out what the bottom of the triangle is, we have to use this 17 up here. If this whole thing is 37 and just this little part is 17, then how big is that part? Well, we can figure that out by doing 37 minus 17, and that gives us 20. So this little part of just this triangle here is 20 inches. All right, once we know that's 20, what do we do to go about finding the height? Well, if you remember that the base and the height are perpendicular, that means they form a right angle, which means this forms a right triangle. So to find the height of the triangle, we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem. So h squared plus 20 squared equals 25 squared. $400 equals 625. Subtract 400 from both sides, and then square root it. So the height of our triangle is 15. So triangle, 1/2. We decided the base was 20, and now we know our height is 15. All right, let's take care of this rectangle. Now our rectangle, base and height, they have to be perpendicular, which means the height of the triangle is also the height of our rectangle. So base will be 17, height will be 15. All right, for our half circle, we need the radius. So the radius is half of this distance here, which we just found to be 15. So if the whole thing is 15, then half of it is 7.5. So we're gonna do pi times the radius squared, but it's a half circle, so we're gonna divide that by 2. So all I need to do now is the math here. So half of 20 is 10 times 15, so 150. 15 times 17 is 255. And then pi times 7.5 squared times pi. And then don't forget to divide it by 2 because we only want the half circle, 88.4. All right, so it's really important to make sure you have already decided what you're going to do with these numbers. Sometimes you're going to add them, sometimes you're going to subtract, and sometimes you're doing a combination. So taking the 3 seconds it takes to think about this part will be really handy once we have all these numbers. So we're adding the triangle plus the rectangle, to 55, but we're subtracting the half circle. And if we added them all together, our number would be too big. So 150 plus 255 minus 88.4. So our area of our shaded region, 316.6 units, inches squared. All right, I hope you found this video helpful, but if you still have questions, that is okay. Just give me a shout out on email or pop into a Zoom meeting. I'd love to help you. Otherwise, have an amazing day.